Hey y'all, this is Thoughts Between Shots, a storytelling podcast where one great question leads to one unforgettable story. I'm your host, Nammy Sirur, and in every episode, I ask my guests to tell a story they've almost never shared before, and then we break it down to learn why it worked so well. If you want to get better at storytelling, asking more thoughtful questions, or really just becoming a better communicator, you're in the right place. So, my guest today is Rudy Reynoso, whom I've met through Toastmasters. Rudy is a fantastic storyteller and speaker and just has such a unique style to him that I just felt like I had to have him on the pod. So, Rudy, welcome. And let's begin with my one question. So, for you, Rudy, I want to know, tell me about a time that you took a giant leap of faith and it paid off in unexpected ways.
A giant leap of faith indeed. So let me take you back 11, 12 years now almost to 2014. And this was the year I graduated from college from the University of North Texas. And I want to give you context as far as who I was back in that day. At this point in 2012, I was elected the first Latino student body president at UNT. I was the first in my family to go to college, and I was also elected to serve as a student regent. A student regent oversees all the students and represents the student's voice at the UNT system level, so just above all the universities. In addition to this, I was president of the Green Tones, which is an a cappella group where I served as beatboxer. I was heavily involved at my university. And with all these different accolades and things that I accomplished, the one big failure of things in this recipe is that my ego was through the roof. I actually distinctly remember telling my mom, Mom, don't you know like how big of a deal I am? And I'm just so embarrassed by this looking back now. But at that point in time, I was, 2021, just on top of the world, right? And I would just had this inflated sense of ego and this inflated sense of just life being in my favor, right? I relate a lot to the novel The Count of Monte Cristo by Alejandro Dumas, where the main character, Edmond Dantes, was just made captain. He was had a beautiful fiance and was actually just promoted to captain in his crew to now have a good job. And so that was basically kind of where I was. I had a girlfriend at the time, and over the summer, my uncle Carlos, who is a priest in Colombia, came by to visit us for a quinceañera. A quinceañera is like a sweet 16, 15 years old in Mexican culture. He comes down and he makes the same invitation to all the cousins of essentially come down to Colombia to experience what life is like in a monastery where people are studying to become priests. Now, at this point, I was very heavily Catholic, very devout and dogmatic growing up. It wasn't until arriving to UNT that I even heard about other religions or got to meet and have conversations with other people. But this like really blew my world view apart because I really lost my faith at that point. I went from heavily devout, worship leader, teen group leader, to finally learning about, Hinduism, Shintoism, Buddhism, Islam, all these different religions, and just being lost, really. Now, I am a pretty extreme person, so I went from heavily devout all the way not just to atheist, but actually anti-theist. So anti-theist is someone that believes that religion is actually something evil or negative in the world. So I went from one end of the pendulum to the other. And part of the reason I mentioned the ego is that because of this invitation from my uncle, at that time, my ego was all about, you know what, I got the right answers. I know how this thing works. I know I got the whole world figured out at 21. Let me go to this thing to show you that I'm right, essentially was the starting point. So what followed was essentially a 3-month internship, so to speak, at the monastery, where I had to give up everything. So I was dating a girl at the time and actually to break up with her because you can't have any relationships, at that time. I was also not allowed to do magic. And when I say magic, I mean, I'm a professional magician, so I couldn't do card tricks or anything like that. I had to leave that at home. Same thing with all the technology. So cameras, laptops, all that had to be left at home. And I'm just have to pack one small suitcase with a couple changes of clothes. I pull up, and the monastery really changed my life because we started every day at 5 a.m. with the sound of a bell ringing, a huge church bell ringing, and Gregorian chants. So it's 5 a.m. and you start hearing, oh, right, just echoing through. It's myself along with about 55 other young men, all just, in this remote location. We're in the mountains of Bogota, Colombia. It's just, we're far from civilization. Everything is self-reliant. So all the cooking, all the cleaning, all the maintenance, everything has to be done by the individuals there. And I relate one specific story that really opened my eyes completely, because at this time, being an atheist, I consistently challenged all the other individuals there, why are you here? What's going on here? And the stories from the other young men there were really what changed my perspective and really opened me up to understanding that maybe I didn't have all the answers, and that maybe there's more in life than just what may be found within some pages, but actually can affect people's lives. And I got to see firsthand both the beauty and also the weaknesses of a religious life, but also the sacrifice that it takes to even become a priest at that time. And I just want to relate one quick story here, a meta story here, is all of the clothes that we have, because everything is self-sufficient, we have everything except a washer and a dryer. So at the end of the week, we would have to take our dirty clothes to the community where we'd have our mass, our church service, and ask someone random, would you please wash my clothes? Now, this is a huge ask, right? I mean, especially, especially back old Rudy with like the ego on top of on top of theirs. How can I ask someone to wash my clothes, right? But no, you have to humble yourself. And so every week we would just go take the dirty clothes. And I remember one week, I think I missed a week or something happened where I was out of town that week, and I had all my clothes saved up except for one last pair, the last pair that I had on me, literally my shirt and jeans. I take them to the church. It's a young lady named Rosalinda, which means beautiful rose. She and her family. I'm like, hey, can you wash my clothes? She's like, yeah, I got you. Cool. Dap me up. What's up now? So the following week was a pretty excruciating week in the sense of work, because everything from gardening to like even plumbing has to be done. And so sometimes not the most clean of work. And so I'm just stuck there with, my dirty shirts and pants. And I'm really looking forward to Saturday, right? So Saturday comes, and I look for her, and I look for her, and I look for her, and find no one. Rosalinda, for whatever reason, was out of town and did not arrive. So the following week, I'm still in my same clothes every single day, putting them on and just working them. I'm starting to smell, right? I mean, it's such a, you can't run away from it. Like, it's literally on you the whole time. Finally, that next week comes, and she's there. Mijo, I'm so sorry. I was out of town, blah, blah, blah. But when she handed me the baskets of clothes, she put them in a basket. I remember them all being folded. That feeling of having fresh clothes again, clean clothes again, was better than any Christmas I had in a long, long time. And I just feel so thankful to Rosalinda, because the lesson she taught me is really, it's not these grandiose accomplishments that make us who we are. It's these simple gestures of kindness. And her kindness towards me, I think, really opened up my heart and allowed me to now, every time I, I wash my clothes, I'm just so thankful of the fact of having something, nice to wear, something clean to wear. And I also think of her and my experience there at the monastery. And so that really started for me a 10-year transformational journey to really open up my heart more towards humanity, have more compassion, have more empathy. And all that really started by spending 3 months in a monastery as an atheist in Colombia.
Wow. And it all started with laundry. Who would have thought? what what a lesson. I love it. So Rudy, of course, you are a master storyteller. I would love to break down your story and why it worked so well. But first, I want the audience to know who you are and what you do. So who are you, Rudy?
Great question, especially after such an intense experience like that, right? Am I the laundry? Am I the clothes, right? Well, myself, I am Rudy Reynoso. I am the oldest of three brothers. Most people know me because of my magic. I'm a professional magician and keynote speaker. I started doing magic or performing magic alongside my father 25 years ago on Christmas Eve in
Ah.
1999, where we put together a little magic show for our family and friends. Since then, I just continued my obsession with magic, started performing, started getting paid to perform. At college is what things started to really pick up. And then since then, I've spent maybe the past 13 to 15 years performing for Fortune 500 companies. And in the recent 5 years, I've started doing more keynote speeches, more communication workshops. My main thing, or a main driving force in life, is I believe that everyone has a great speaker within them. And I gain so much rewarding experience from helping other people improve. Doing little workshops or one-on-ones and just seeing people even make a little bit of improvement is just so rewarding. Add that on top with some magic and just sharing some magic with people and keeping the wonder alive. That's what keeps my day going.
Wow, I'll be honest, you're the first professional magician I've known. So that's so interesting. I mean, how I know you said it's a family business and everything. What does that look like when you go to, say, a Fortune 500 company? What is a Fortune 500 company hiring you to do magic wise?
So a little bit about how to even get there, right? Because it
Mm.
is an interesting tier. I started first. I remember I actually took a picture of this. The first time I ever got paid, I got super lucky. This was when I was in high school, maybe 15, 16. And I had a connection that did a youth group at Austin College. So I'm from
Mm.
Sherman, Texas, but so it's not to be confused with Austin, Texas, but Austin College in
Mm.
Sherman, Texas. I had a fellow student there who led a youth group, and they asked me to do magic. And I remember getting paid $75 for 1 hour of magic.
Wow.
So since then, I just kept performing for different colleges, nonprofits, whatever I could keep working my way up. And almost always it was referral based. Someone from one magic show would see me at another.
Mm.
Of course, you just multiply this out throughout a couple of years. And I remember doing magic. The three big ones are Tyson, Hilton hotels, and McDonald's. And each one obviously
Mm.
needs different things. But for example, with McDonald's, they had opened up a new location. So I went over and did some magic there. For Hilton, I actually worked for Hilton Hotel. So how I got connected there as well. Some of the different conventions or just networking expos is kind of what I do a lot as well. It's not always on stage. The two primary forms of magic I do is my stage show in front of everyone, but my favorite is what's called mingling magic, where I
Huh.
walk around during cocktail hour, happy hour, or networking hour and do magic for small groups throughout the evening. I hope
Nice.
that answers your question.
Ah, that's so cool. I love the way you even framed this answer because this shows, and for the audience, just so you know, this is real expertise in storytelling, which anytime you ask a good storyteller a question, they won't just give you the direct answer. They'll be like, no, 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 let me tell you the background. Let me tell you a story about the question you just asked, right? Let me give you the preface to the story before I get to the main point. And I love that. That is what I've seen so many master storytellers do. And I have a suspicion that there's some link between magic and storytelling, right? How did you develop your skill as a storyteller? Was it through magic or something else?
Great question. And I don't know if it's because I'm a master storyteller or because I like to talk that I give all the extra context.
Samesies.
Magic and storytelling or speaking, I believe, go hand in hand. In magic, even if you pick up the basic magic books at your local library, you will see two things for every magic trick. You will
Hmm.
see method and you will see patter. So in magic, we have the word patter, Patter, which means the words you say that go along with the trick or
Huh.
the effect. And the reason is you have the method, which is how you actually accomplish the trick. Oh, is it a trick card? Do you do a switch here and there? But the patter is what you say or what's the story behind the trick. So magic already from that foundation always got me thinking about almost as two different things, what I'm doing, but also what I'm saying.
Hmm.
Now in magic, I believe the great magicians give people a great show, but good magicians give people a great show, but great magicians can put themselves in the audience's shoes. And I think
Hmm.
more than anything to me, what magic has taught me is empathy. To be able to understand that I may be doing the same magic trick, but if I perform it for kids, if I perform it for adults, if I perform it at a busy happy hour where people are maybe they're drinking, that's also a different vibe. Or if I'm performing it on rainy street, the same trick has to be calibrated and adjusted for every audience. And the
Hmm.
only way I can do that properly is by letting go of who I am and trying to put myself in the person's shoes. What do they want to see? What do they want to experience? How can I best communicate so that I can reach that end? So I take that principle and now apply it to speaking. I think one of the biggest lessons about speaking and just life in general is that it's not about you. It's not about me. It's not about you. Like it's about serving the client, serving the audience, and how can you best, of course, improve yourself, but to that end. Not so much as, at least my perspective, not so much as aggrandizing myself, but I'm going to improve myself as much as I can to help you the best I can.
I'm so fascinated with this idea. I've never heard this word pattern. I mean, I've heard it through other stuff, but never in this
Yeah, yeah.
context. Can you give me an example of what patter versus method looks like in practice?
Yes. So thankfully, I actually do have some cards here.
Oh.
So I'll just show you a quick example. I'll even teach you a little bit of something here. So here is an example of what's going on. So first, I'm going to show you just a trick without patter. This is almost silent movie days.
Mhm.
I'm going to try and do my best here. So we have here the Eight of Hearts.
Mhm.
Okay, let me see if I can do this. Move the camera. Sorry, move this for just a moment.
What?
Okay, not bad. Okay,
Yeah.
that's cool, right? Okay, so card change, pretty awesome, right? And this is where, of course, every magician has their own style. For
Hmm.
example, David Blaine is very much a very minimalist pattern. So he will almost always let the magic speak for itself. You then also have the comedic duo Penn and Teller, where Penn won't stop talking and Teller says no words. So that's almost
Ah.
like those are two extremes of patter or not patter. Now that same trick, let me do it again, but now let me add a little bit of patter. So I could say, for example, so I'm not sure if I can do this through the screen, but Nammy, can you actually maybe just wave your hand? Just if you can do a wave, you can
Mhm.
send the power of that wave to do it. Try it out. Try it. Just do a little wave. Do a little wave. See, that wave actually caused it to change, right?
What? What is
Right.
happening? What sorcery is this?
So it's the same trick. However, I can give a whole different context to it.
Hmm.
I've also added, for example, I could do something where maybe I use a queen.
Okay.
So if I'm performing a trick for a girl, I'll use a queen or a king for a guy or whatever. But you can also tie that in. Okay. Oh, are you the queen in your life? Let's use that idea. So it's just, how do you personalize something to the audience? That's really what it comes down
Hmm.
to. And that's a great joy that I found in performing, and something I learned a lot, especially here in Austin, performing on Rainy Street.
Oh my God, that is okay. Now I want to tell everyone to go to your magic shows. But before we get to that, let's talk about the story you told today, because that's the whole point, right? To teach people about good storytelling, good communication. How did you go about crafting your story?
So for the story of the monastery, I think it's also important first that it doesn't have to be a crazy, insane event. It
Hmm.
just has to be presented in such a way. I could tell a very similar story about what I had for breakfast today, right?
Mm.
But it's all in the delivery. And I think this is what we can learn a lot from stand-up comedians and great speakers, that it's not really of course the content always matters. However, the presentation, your tone, your delivery, your pacing will always make anything greater. So if you can deliver
Mm.
both great content and great delivery, that's when you truly have the whole package all together. What I thought about with the story of the monastery was, first, have a story that has a great hook.
Yeah.
Right off the bat, an atheist in a monastery, right? These things don't add up.
Yeah.
A good technique for your stories is to figure out a dichotomy, something that maybe doesn't go together. For example, I don't know, you could say something like underwater basketball. I don't know, just two
Yeah.
phrases that don't really make sense or that you wouldn't really imagine
Yeah.
from it. The idea is, can you craft first at its almost a thesis statement? What is the core idea of your story?
Mm.
And ideally something that can catch people's attention.
Yeah.
From there, kind of as mentioned earlier, I wanted to give a little bit of context as far as where the story is taking place and why I'm even sharing the story. So that's why I bring up the idea of me doing these accomplishments, but having a lot of ego as a result of it. Then how, the hero's journey almost, where my uncle comes down, makes the invitation, and then I come visit. And then something that really, I think, is the aiming point, or the final point of the story, is what I like to use a lot, is some sort of meaning or some sort of, what's the word,
Like a moral of the
the moral,
story or takeaway.
yes,
Yeah.
the moral of the story.
Hmm.
And for me, it was that one about the laundry and being thankful about how a person could actually open my heart to kindness again. And that it
Hmm.
wasn't so much like, obviously I'm glad I did all these great accomplishments, but this meant so much to me because it allowed me to kind of come down and be grounded once again. And I think having a takeaway, whether it be something you learned, an action item, or just a general insight, I think is always helpful to end a story with.
Hmm.
So that's kind of the general overview of how I crafted choosing what to tell in the story.
That's so true. You can start with something as mundane as what did you have for breakfast today? But if you think about the hero's journey is such a good template, right? So you can always sort of go 30,000 feet up and think about, okay, what was the origin, like what was the before, what was that inciting incident, or who was that Dumbledore, who was the guide. In this case it was your uncle, and he sort of called you to action, and then all those beats along the way where there was conflict or something, that's sort of just going like a roller coaster up to that point where then you would start to suddenly descend. So if you think about the time you started doing magic to now, how do you feel your storytelling has evolved?
Oh wow. So first off, I agree a lot with everything with the hero's journey. Joseph Campbell, hero
Yeah.
of the hero of a thousand faces. That's rocking and rolling. As far as how I've changed or how the storytelling has developed across these years, it has changed completely
Mm.
because I look back. I've been very fortunate to film a lot of my magic throughout the years, or throughout the decades at this point.
Ah.
And I went back recently to watch me doing magic in high school.
Oh,
And
wow.
there's just so many elements that, right, obviously I honor where I was at that time, and that's
Yeah.
part of my journey. But I can see now, especially just in vocal tonality, my movements, the eye contact. One of the biggest mistakes a lot of beginner magicians make, and that I made as well, was always looking at my hands all the time or at the cards and
Mm.
really connecting and looking up to the audience. And this is something that we as speakers oftentimes do, I believe, where we either don't make eye contact with the audience or we'll look down at our feet or up when really the audience is right there.
Mm.
And making that connection is a big difference maker in what people take away from that experience. The other thing for me, storytelling wise as well, is I guess two lessons. One is putting more of myself in my stories or just allowing who I am to kind of flow through the magic.
Mm.
I very much was inspired by David Blaine, but almost took upon his mantle of being, very, do you want to see some magic? Right. Very, 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 plain or low expression. But who I am naturally is a very expressive person. And I think that sets me apart from other magicians of being so comfortable with who I am. That's what I like to share. And the other, which I know I haven't really done too much here, but is to slow down a little bit more when I'm
Mm.
performing and also use pauses. Pausing alone has changed my magic and shot it through the roof because what I believe I always go for in magic are the crazy reactions. And it doesn't have to be someone yelling or running around, but just knowing that you really altered someone's worldview, even just for a little bit, that just you just broke them and like, what? Like, how is this real?
Yeah.
And the only way I believe, or one of the best ways to do this, is by pausing right before the reveal because
Mm.
the reason that happens is it creates a sense of tension and people generally are uncomfortable with tension, so you create this kind of pressure cap that's filling until you finally say turn the card over, boom, and then boom, it just explodes. People just yell, run around, flip tables over.
Yeah.
And the same principle applies to speaking, public speaking. Either right before, I found right before or right after you make a point. So let's use that idea of what I said before as far as and that opened my heart to kindness. I could use a pause right before. I could say something like, and the laundry that Rosalinda gave to me, it opened my heart to kindness. And it just hits differently than if I were to say it all together.
Yeah.
Because there's a moment now where people can experience a little bit about with the emotion. You can almost, I mean, even just then I kind of went back there in a moment, just emotionally.
Hmm.
And you need that space to do it. So pausing and having more fun with who I am have been the two biggest changes.
Both of those things are so important. And I think about stand up comics, right? That's sort of what I liken it to, in terms of especially pausing at the right moments to let that joke breathe or let that moment sink in. Because if you just rush through it, it's like the audience is going to take cues from you. And so if you don't give them that sort of cue to say, hey, this is your moment to think about what I just said and take it in, they're just going to be sort of passively listening without really, yeah, so you're putting them in that moment. um yeah, this was, oh my god, this is so great. All of this stuff is a masterclass that I hope everyone's taking notes on. So Rudy, before we go, where can everybody find you? Because I think it's so important that everyone just check out your stuff online. So where can they find you?
Yes, you can find me on Instagram, TikTok as Rudy Ray Jr., and that's Rudy REYJR. You can also look me up on my website, www.rudyrayjr.com, or you can also just probably Google Rudy Reynoso, Rudy Ray Jr. magic. I'll pop up on there. Happy to do any magic, either for small or large conferences, as well as keynote speaking.
Yep, I'll link all his stuff below so you can actually go check him out. Thank you so much, Rudy. This was so wonderful. And it goes without saying, you are such a great communicator and such a great example of storytelling and performance and all of this stuff that I'm so happy I got to share your talents. And you got to show us some magic, which was awesome.
Thank you so much, Nammy, for having me on. And I appreciate everything you're doing here. And also so excited to always see you speak. And just best of luck with all your endeavors.
And that's a wrap on this episode of Thoughts Between Shots. If you laughed, cried, found something sneaky useful, share it with your people. And if you have an idea for a story, a storyteller, or a great question, hit me up in the DMs. Until next time, keep being curious and keep telling good stories.